violent and ruthless women. Today, we bring you by far the most dangerous female criminals in the world, traveling not only to Mexico, Italy, or even Latvia, but also taking a look back over the past decades. Among other things, we introduce you to one of the most fearsome clan bosses in Europe, show you the worst female war criminal in Germany, and explain why men in particular should be extremely wary of this seemingly nice old lady. The video will be fascinating, so stay tuned here at Wise Fool. For our first extremely dangerous and very young criminal, we go to Mexico, and more specifically the state of Jalisco. That's where the world's most brutal killer comes from, Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, also known as La Katrina. This name, which symbolizes the form of death in Mexico, was given to the young woman in the early 2000s because of her ruthless approach as a hired assassin for the CJNG, one of the most powerful drug cartels in the world. The cartel is also known for its extremely ruthless and violent behavior. According to an estimate by Mexican police authorities, members of the CJNG are allegedly responsible for an unimaginable 2,465 murders in 2019 alone. La Katrina is said to have been directly responsible for a large percentage of the victims. Her story is not that rare in Mexico. Coming from poor families, the Mexican wanted nothing more than to live a life of luxury. So she joined the cartel as a teenager. She usually appeared on social media in expensive clothes and showed off her heavy weapons. The press often called her the most beautiful killer in Mexico. In fact, the 21-year-old had such a distinguished career in the cartel that she had her own army to whom she gave orders. However, all that changed on January 10, 2021, when the CJNG cartel lost several of its best men and women. La Katrina and her team were involved in a fierce shootout with the police. 6 members were seriously injured, and some of them died on the spot. La Katrina was among the victims. We continue with possibly the most evil woman in the world, American Judy Buenano, also known as the Black Widow. In order to finance her life, the American woman did not necessarily target men, but their life insurance policies. She gave her first husband, James Goodyear, special vitamin tablets, which were not filled with vitamins, but with deadly arsenic. The motivation for her act was a $200,000 life insurance policy that Judy had taken out on Goodyear. This amount was extremely high for the year 1962 and made Judy an extremely wealthy woman. But Judy was far from satiated, and so her second husband, Bobby Joe Morris, also had to pass away in a similar fashion 12 years later. In fact, Judy not only targeted the husbands, but also administered the poison pills to her own son Michael. He was even paralyzed by the constant intake of the poison and confined to a wheelchair. In 1979, Judy took her 19-year-old son to a lake for a canoe trip, from which only Judy returned. Judy is said to have deliberately pushed her son into the water in order to obtain 3 different insurance policies that she had taken out for him in advance. In 1983, however, the Black Widow took things too far when she wanted to do the same to her husband, John Gentry. The arsenic poisoning didn't work, and so she planted a bomb in Gentry's car. It exploded as planned, but Gentry survived the attack, and it was he who testified against Judy Buenano. Although the police were fairly confident that they had uncovered a real serial killer in Judy, Judy was only charged with the attempted murder of Gentry in the spring of 1985. Apparently, however, the case was enough for the court, because the 42-year-old feared criminal was one of the few women in Florida to be sentenced to death. Her sentence was subsequently carried out in 1998 via the electric chair. From an already convicted serial killer, we now come to one of the most dangerous cyber criminals, who was only recently convicted, and her sentence is still pending. Just last year, a U.S. court convicted Latvian hacker Ilsa Coke, who was charged with identity theft, bank fraud, and large-scale money laundering. The 55-year-old is allegedly a member of the Conti criminal hacker group, which made $180 million in 2021 alone. Witty allegedly instructed other members of the gang to hack millions of computers to obtain banking information and other sensitive data in order to extort victims then. The hacker, who worked under the pseudonym Max, not only hacked individuals, but also attacked the IT systems of hospitals, schools, public utilities, and governments. Then we come to a vicious criminal who, like Alawite, remained hidden for a long time and reigned in the shadows of the underworld. We are talking about none other than Maria Licciardi, head of the Camorra clan, the most powerful mafia gang in Italy. Licciardi, who is also known by many as the Godmother, went unnoticed by the police for several decades, as already mentioned, and was careful to ensure that her true identity remained a secret. Although the 72-year-old today took over the family mafia business early on, her official police record was spotless. It was only when a gang war broke out in Naples in 1999 that the police learned about her and eventually revealed her as the head of the clan. It was gradually revealed that Licciardi not only continued her brother's and her husband's criminal enterprises, but expanded them. In addition to the illicit drug operations, extortion, and smuggling, there were also numerous violent crimes and prostitution. This industry was long considered taboo for the Camorra clan, but Licciardi broke the honor code in order to bring even more money to the clan. Today, the 72-year-old is still one of the most dangerous people in Italy and is still at the top of the Camorra clan, even though she has been in prison since 2021. From Italy to the present, we will then look back to Germany in the period 1933 to 1945, when Ilsa Coke, known in many history books as the Witch of Buchenwald, caused fear and terror. Coke is said to have not only tortured the prisoners of the Buchenwald concentration camp, but also abused them for her own absurd fantasies. Together with her husband, concentration camp officer Karl Koch, the housewife lived in the center of the concentration camp grounds in a luxurious villa where the prisoners had to repeatedly clean and cook for Ilsa, as she was too lazy for these tasks. Koch is also said to have had a macabre and heartless sense of pleasure, and often watched the execution of punishments in the concentration camp. In 1947, Ilsa Coke was indicted by the Americans and a German court for her crimes during the Buchenwald trials, and indeed, she was the only female defendant. Ilsa Coke was sentenced to life imprisonment for her crimes against humanity. However, Coke chose suicide on 1 September 1967 and died at the age of 61 in a cell in the Bavarian women's prison in Aichach. We have already talked about the Black Widow, who killed her husband, and now we want to introduce you to the White Widow, whose horrific crime cost the lives of more than 400 people. After British Samantha Luth converted from Christianity to Islam at the age of 17, she developed increasingly radical views through the influence of her future husband, the murderer Jermaine Lindsay. 10 years later, at 27, Samantha was already one of the most wanted people in the world and was on wanted lists in more than 190 countries. The reason was that she joined the Somali militia, Al-Shabaab, after the murder of her husband in 2003, and was responsible for at least 5 attacks on tourists in Africa. She was also blamed for an attack in Nairobi in which 71 people died. The problem is that Sharafia, as Luthwaite is now known, has not yet been arrested, although she is extremely important to the police. She is considered to be an extremely good organizer who recruits young women and children in particular to join her team. She then trains them to become the next generation of dangerous killers. For this reason, experts consider her one of the most influential women and a major threat to the Western world. For this reason, she is also on Interpol's Red Alert list. This means that as soon as the 40-year-old woman appears in public today, she will be arrested. That was our video for today. Subscribe if you found the video interesting, and we'll see you next time here at Wise Fool.